Welcome to Ignatian Pathways, a podcast from OIS that gathers voices from across the Ignatian family to share the many ways to God that we have discovered via Ignatius's way. As always, I'm Dr. Dave De La Fuente, Associate Director for Ignatian Young Adult Ministries. Here's another episode recorded back in November 2025 when we were live at the Ignatian Solidarity Network's Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice in Washington, D.C. Speaking of Ignatian families, today's guests are an actual Ignatian family. Clara Sayans, Outreach Manager of Jesuit Refugee Service USA, and John Byrd, Communications Manager, American Jesuits International. They're going to share more about the organizations they work for, their relationship with Ignatian Spirituality, and lots of other great things. And so it's great to have you both here. Yeah, how are we doing?
Good. It's great to be here. It's always good to be at the Ignatian Family Teach-In and connect with old friends and have great conversations. Happy to be here.
Yeah, last year was my first year, despite being in Jesuit land for half of my life, which was kind of wild. And it was like, that's John. And for the listener, a graced history of sorts. So we were part of the retreat ministry at Fordham University as undergrads, lots of mutual friends, ties to really graced spaces and lots of memories, some of which probably are best not shared. And I met Clara, and then I met Clara again in a professional context. And when I arrived, I was like, wait a second, we know each other. And then it was like, wait, John and Clara are married.
Hey,
yeah.
surprise.
So truly Ignatian family. It's so great to be here with you both. I'd love to start, especially for our listeners who are covering a whole range of possibilities, with an invitation, if you're comfortable with it, to share a little bit about a grace that you've received from Ignatian Spirituality. It clearly permeates who you are, what you do, the family that you have and are. And it could be anything. It could be related to a moment, an experience, an idea, right? Image, whatever comes to mind, but a grace, just so that we can get a sense of what this means for you and what this can mean for our listeners.
Sure. Maybe I can start. On our way here, we were on the metro and we were just discussing what our 15-year-old version of ourselves thought about us right now. And if I think about that, I have to think about what Ignatian spirituality has done to my life, and how I feel like seeing God in everything that I've done these past 10 years, 20 years of my life. And my story of salvation, it's related with Ignatian spirituality, and how the spiritual exercises rescued me 11 years ago. And that helped me find my true self and my gifts and put that to the greater glory of God, and brought me to the world of education and education for justice. So I think that could be one thing. And the other thing for me, it's seeing Jesus as a friend and being able and being taught that I can speak to him as a friend speaks to other friend.
Yeah, I love that. Brings back memories for me too. But before we get to that, how about for you, John?
Yeah, I mean, I one grace I'm thinking about right now would be the daily progress of Ignatian spirituality, both in the sense that every day you have an opportunity to do things a little bit better, but also recognizing that, hey, there are days that are better and there are days that aren't as great. And we bring all of that into prayer with our Lord. We're parents. We have 2 little kids. So there are definitely days where things go better and things don't go so well. And being able to enter prayer in that sense of, with all of the good and the bad, with all of my baggage, which is everything I've done today, and meet God where I'm at, rather than trying to, purify myself and encounter this perfect sense of peace, and then I'll enter into prayer. I feel like Ignatian spirituality is like, poof, you walk in the door, you drop your backpack, and then you just dive right into it. So.
Yeah, that's so true. It's a great image, and it gave me particular joy. Although we are in a quieter space, you can still hear a little bit in the background, and that's totally fine. the other episodes I did were amidst the noise, and it's kind of deliberate, that it helps simulate that sense of what Ignatian spirituality is for a lot of people. It's amidst it all, you plop down, you get to it with everything, right? With the stress of the job, with whatever it is I'm carrying, and God, who is both Lord and friend in the language you just used, right? And that beautiful relationship, that's all really great. Now, it's clear that grace is tied to who you are and what you do. So let's take a second for you to share about that professional context, which is also ministerial. The organizations, I could say what they are, but it's best to hear from you what organization that is and what you do there.
You want to start?
Sure. So I am communications manager for American Jesuits International. We are the international solidarity organization of the U.S. Jesuits. What that means practically is that we are the bridge between the U.S. Jesuits and Jesuit works internationally, mostly in Latin America, Africa, and Asia. But as communications manager, my role is to tell stories, to connect people and faces and communities from Latin America, Africa, and Asia with communities and organizations and individuals in the U.S. who are interested in learning about that work and in getting involved in it. So I really feel like Ignatian Spirituality is a big part of that, because weaving those stories, but also those communities and building that bridge of solidarity really is only possible from a place of hope and joy and prayer. I'm very lucky to be able to work at the Jesuit Conference here in DC. We have our little office space there, and we have daily prayer on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We have daily mass, and so I get to go down in the middle of the day, have a little quick mass with the Jesuits, and then get back to work. And that moment really helps clear my mind and focus those stories, and I feel like the afternoon is even more productive. So
beautiful. Just a quick thought too, American Jesuits International is a great name. It's also interesting because, like, in my mind, there's a sense that to be Jesuit is to be international, right? But there is something about the narrative that title, that name conveys. And so, of course, we'll unpack that a little bit more, but let's hear from Clara too.
Sure. Yeah. So I am the outreach officer for Jesuit Refugee Service, and we are the international organization of the Jesuits, the only one, we can say, present in 58 countries, and we were founded in 1980 by Arrupe. And I think if we link that to our Ignatian identity, we are recently, yesterday we celebrated our 45th anniversary, and we are reflecting on this quote when he founded URS, that he was saying, our mission is to be with rather than do for. And I think that captures the way that we are present in these 58 countries. Our mission is to accompany, serve, and advocate. And I can say that here in the US, before 2020, we were very focused on advocacy and fundraising, and to support the other countries and to support the country offices and the work in the field. Right now, since everything that was happening at the border, we started our program Caminar Contigo there. And after that, we were linking people that were heading to the interior. I were looking for friends, companions, people that could just hang out with them and build this friendship and grab coffee. So we are still working with a great network of volunteers. And I find like a lot of joy and hope in this work. My role is to, I would say, like community organizer, just be with the people and try to listen what the way that they want to work with us and engage with our mission on the local level, to recruit advocates, to work with volunteers. Now we are doing court observation. So just finding ways, being creative about ways that we can better accompany and serve those that are in our cities, and to bridge that gap. The same way that John was saying, how they're bridging the gap between the Jesuits and the Jesuit friends and network here in the U.S. with those serving in the margins in the international level. I feel that here I'm bridging that gap between the people that really wants to make a difference and those that we want to serve.
Love that. There's obviously very common threads between the work that you do and the language of, like, you tell stories. It's about narrative and it's being with that. There's a close interrelationship with that even though I think I'm on the weaker side when it comes to actually practicing justice, I think about my work as a spiritual director and as a minister, where it's about the people's stories with God and being with that reality. That is where God is. And so it's really great to see all the different applications and implications, what that means, what that looks like, and how we do it. And also, this raises a thought and a question, and I don't necessarily mean to be unfair to the rest of the Catholic tradition, but there is something distinctive about an Ignatian way, or the Ignatian way perhaps, that makes it amenable in a different way, maybe we could put it that way, to living justly. And there's clues, of course, in what you just shared, but just wondering, like, are there other elements that you'd want to name that are related to that? Like, for example, I would say imagination, but that's not the only thing we could say. What else makes this spirituality distinctive and so amenable to pursuing justice, accompaniment, being with each other, right? The big question on a Saturday night.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of asking the question. I'm at a point where over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been working more in the global church, some programs with the Vatican, and I've been exposed to other spiritualities that, I've been immersed in Jesuit spirituality for 20 years now.
Yeah.
And so 15 at least. And I found in other spiritualities with Franciscan or the Paulist brothers, new interpretations of things that had become sort of oxidized in my spiritual practice. And they're helping me reinvigorate that. But thinking in an Ignatian sense, things that are purely Ignatian, or that come really from the core of our spirituality. One thing that for me is very important, and this goes to the way you phrase the question, is the service element. I think about St. Ignatius and the first companions in Venice, and they're in this church, right? They're trying to get to Rome. They haven't quite made it there yet. And they're in this church. I think it was an abandoned church on the outside of town. And they broke up the group. So a couple would stay at home and pray, and a couple would go out and beg for food for their day. And they'd do acts of service, and they'd be in the community. And so that experience of service and prayer is something that grew very naturally out of this small group of guys trying to figure out how to live their faith. So I think it's in the core lifeblood of Ignatian spirituality, because it was present at that it's something that just came out of them naturally. So I do think it's very deeply rooted in Ignatian spirituality.
Love that. Yeah. I don't often think about the Venice part of the story, so that's also a great treat. Yeah.
John mentioning and talking about the first companions, I was thinking about St. Francis Xavier, and because I'm from Spain, I grew up like really close to like St. Ignatius and St. Francis Xavier, and being able to visit those places, yeah, and just doing retreats there. So, at the where St. Francis Xavier grew up, in the castle where he grew up, there is an image of Jesus crucified, and I don't know if you know that, but he's smiling. So, and it's beautiful, and we call it El Cristo de la Sonrisa, the smiling Christ. I don't know if that translates.
Yeah.
And for most of us in the Jesuit Ignatian world in Spain, it means a lot, and we grew up with that image, and it's that beyond death, beyond what we think that it's like everything will be over. It's something else, and he knows it, and he's smiling. So that sticks to me like every time that I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know what's next, and I don't know, and I'm like hesitating, and that has happened a lot especially this past year with everything that has happened
Mm-hmm.
to our organizations, to the people that we serve, and to the people in this country in general.
Yeah.
And looking at that image that it's in our bedroom and has accompanied us for our whole life together, just like it's going to be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, I don't know how, but it's going to be worth it. So that smiling Christ for me has it's part of my Ignatian spirituality, if we want to call it that way. And then I was thinking also, recently I was in Guatemala with the Red Jesuita con Migrantes. We had our Continental Assembly. We were meeting all the Jesuit ministries working on migration from Argentina to Canada. And that remembered me also that we are in these because we are part of a bigger family. There is a Jesuit called Jerónimo Nadal.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to say, at least in Spanish, that nuestra casa es el mundo, our house is the world.
Yep.
And like a couple of weeks ago when I was there, that was just seeing all these people part of the same family. And it's pretty much what you said before when you were talking about John's organization, that the Society of Jesus, it's global, right?
Yeah.
And it's in its nature, that feeling that nuestra casa es el mundo is just like,
Yeah. Just a little nerd out on my end. In the last couple of years, I've been pondering more. There's a nuance in the spiritual exercises. The second week for our listener, the key thing is like about the values of Jesus, the standards of Jesus, that he's the king, he's the person we're accountable to. But then we imagine him in the world, and we imagine the world with Jesus. That by itself is like, you could spend a lifetime just plumbing the depths of that. But I didn't really take to heart that the thing that follows that is a meditation called the application of the senses. And the essential thing that I'm going to get to with this is he goes through all the senses, and it's like, Ignatius says, you need to apply this and hear and see and taste. The last one involves kissing the ground on which, the persons walk. And he means the divine persons, but he also means the human peoples of the world with the final sense. And then Ignatius says something to the effect of, with all your senses, you draw profit, which is code for like, God's going to give you something, pay attention, let it happen. But the last one is, I will always draw profit. And I think it was when I noticed that little nuance that it became clear to me, like that the slogan, the world is our home, the world is our parish. No, he really meant that.
Mm-hmm.
Nadal really meant that. Ignatius really meant that. That's what God wants of us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, of course, one of the things that gives rise to this profound sense of solidarity and togetherness. Yeah, it just reminded me of that. And it's like, that's a really great, and hopefully for our listener, like, it's not about the technicals. It's like, just listen for that essential. Like, God wants us to kiss the earth and really reverence the fact that it is home. Really great stuff there. So I had a couple of, a progression that we've been working on in terms of these podcasts, but I kind of want to flip things a little bit because, we are here at the Ignatian Family Teaching for Justice. Last year, the theme was pressing on instead, steadfast hope in precarious times. This year's theme is pressing on. So it's still about hope that we need, but it's also hope that's real. And I think that's what I love about your sense, your vocation, what you bring, your stories, is that it's a real hope. And so what's one way that this spirituality can help our listeners and other people who are part of this family press on? You've already answered it in a lot of ways, but there could be another, a little tidbit, a little invitation, something you want our listener to see, hear, feel about this spirituality.
For me, and the way I see it, it's about feeling and being a creature of God. And that puts me in a way of fraternity with everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no way that you cannot see and live that without hope. I mean, there is no other way to live it but with hope, because I am creature and I live with others. And when I really acknowledge what does that mean, I need to recognize in the other that you are my brother, you are my sister. And there is a quote, I cannot remember right now who said it. It wasn't a Jesuit, so, but it's
That's okay.
like,
So it's not important.
when two look at each other and they recognize themselves, the world changes. And it's just like looking at the person that you have next to you in the eyes and recognizing the inherent human dignity, and that person is created on the image of God. The world changes there.
Yeah. I think that helps make sense of part of the, and I don't need to tell you this, but for our listener, I think the Ignatian tradition has a long history too of fostering, as the importance of pilgrimage and travel and experiencing the broader world and entering into solidarity by way of that. It's not always perfect. It's always tricky because, people of means can do this, and there's questions about that, but it has a really good goal in mind, and it's part of, I know so many people who were former Jesuit volunteers, right? Right. There's one right here in the space. Yep. And folks who did programs like at Fordham University, it's called Global Outreach, similar thing. Like it totally makes sense why programs like this exist, and why there's a legacy with things like the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. And that's a key component, I think, of this spirituality. And maybe, other layers that we can add to that are it's an experiential dimension, it's mission minded, right? All sorts of connections there. I just wanted to throw that out there for our listener, that like that's a key component. Like the more we travel, the more we encounter, and that encounter becomes real and it changes things.
Yeah, I think one other thing I'd add to the idea of pressing on, tying into global outreach at Fordham, one thing we said back in our day at Fordham was lean into your growing side and meet others at theirs, or something along those lines. And I think the idea of pressing on, it's not smashing on, it's not destroying on, it's not crushing everything in your way so you can move on. It's pressing forward. It's not inactive, but it's also recognizing that change takes time, and sometimes we need to be gentle and caring. And I think oftentimes remembering that we need to meet the other person where they're at in order to press on is an important first step. And I think that is also very Ignatian, very spiritual, of taking the time to think about, like Clara said, that fraternity and that connections with others. Because we're not just, driving a Mack truck on, we're pressing relentlessly, but gently, and trying to move forward together, not just, stampeding over the people in front of us.
Right. Speaking of, in terms of hope from others, the other of creation, brother, sister, but other than us in a sense as human creatures. As you were speaking, I was thinking about, although it's the wrong season for us, we're in the fall, but springtime. And then even, Christmas cacti, if you have got those, they start blooming right around now. And it's pressing on slowly, surely. And that the rest of creation does press on, right? And so there's clues for us as humans that it's not hopeless. Beautiful stuff there. Any other kind of related insights you want to share?
Any other tidbits?
Thinking here. I think also, as I said before, and maybe it's because we had that conversation earlier today, but recognizing your own story of salvation. And I think the spiritual exercises, for example, the first week, or it helps to do that, right? And recognizing the presence of God in your life, and that it's also a reminder of the importance of this pressing on. Like, it's just, there's no way that you cannot trust on what's going to happen in the future if you review your own story of salvation and you recognize the presence of God around it. So
and for our listener too, this idea, right, of story of salvation, grace history is another term that's used. Part of what makes that work in a sense, or makes that intelligible, legible, right? That it's relatable. The examen. That darn simple prayer. In college, there were points where it's like, I'm sick of hearing about this.
Today, there are points where I'm sick of hearing.
Yeah. But truly, right? That beautiful insight that God is in the details of my life. And I think that there's also something about the Ignatian tradition, not the Ignatian tradition alone by any stretch of the imagination, but I think because it's so attentive to method by way of that examen, that I bet you that it's seeped into who each of us are and what we do and why we chose that over something else. Which then leads to another interesting prompt. So a lot of the folks who are going to be part of our program, well, some really will be inspired and are called to do very similar explicit mission-minded work. JRS, AJI, the Jesuits, the Office of Ignatian Spirituality, so on and so forth, retreat houses. But this is a spirituality that helps a lot of people find God in their daily life and apply it, so that they could be a teacher in a public school, they could be a medical doctor, they could be in the most technically secular field imaginable, but they can find God in those details. And so for our future participants of our programs, and even for current ones, there's a sense that what we do in the Office of Ignatian Spirituality and in partnership with lots of other folks is going to help them find God in their professional lives. And this is an opportunity, I think, for you to offer an insight into how do you translate that, right? Like what is something that you looked for that led you to where you are and has confirmed for you, like, this is where I'm called to be. That could speak to someone as they're thinking about what path should I choose in my life. And certainly we could say Jesus, right? But sometimes Jesus speaks in sly ways, right? So what do you look for? A feeling, a practice, value?
I think for me, it is very much a feeling. I don't want to exaggerate the extent to which my professional career is just divine inspiration and divine guidance, but it really has been a series of very fortunate mistakes of a really good friend of ours meeting a Jesuit at a province meeting in Spain, and he happened to be looking for somebody, and she said, I know the guy. The only thing is he's an American. And he was like, well, we can look into it. And it happened to work out. I spent 7 great years working with the Jesuits in Spain. Here, coming to the U.S., we thought the idea of moving back to the U.S. was, a monumental, impossible possibility. But it happened to be that American Jesuits International, then Magis Americas, needed somebody with my particular set of skills, and crazy enough to take on the job. And I was willing to take the jump. And then Clara just fell into the job at JRS, who really needed somebody with her skills as well. And I think those opportunities require 2 things. One, being attentive to them, listening and being open to the opportunity, and then sort of being crazy enough to jump. Our relationship has now moved across the ocean twice.
Wow.
And our professional careers as well. And that is a confidence. It goes to what Clara was saying earlier, a confidence in God that you say, I just feel like this is right. And there's no way I could put on an Excel sheet and calculate that this is going to work out. I'm just going to go with it because it feels right.
We're just talking about that earlier today, that one of the rules for discernment is, St. Ignatius used to say that there's sometimes that you cannot doubt. I mean, and that's a sign too.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about that, moments in our life that have been like that, right? Similar to myself, I was earlier sharing with some colleagues, like, despite what is happening right now in this country, and also that I have felt this year a couple of times that it just wanted to run away. And to be honest, I was like telling John, like, I don't know what we're doing here. We should be like just fleeing right now. And all the time, something was bringing me back to that feeling of affirmation and consolation, super deep, that there is no way, I don't understand this feeling, but I just feel that I am right where I need to be.
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry for those that are listening this, but it's just so difficult to explain that there is sometimes that you just feel that.
Yeah. Well, I think part of what I'm hearing, hopefully this is accurate, tell me if it's not, but what both of you just shared is part of that feeling is the awareness of who you are, the skill set you have, and the needs and the realities. And it becomes clear, definitely, even though it's not fully explainable for each person, then it's like, it becomes clear what that looks like. And it's like, I can't step away from that. I can't run away from that.
There is no way. And one of the things that helps me, for example, is when I did 10 years ago, the spiritual exercises in daily life. So I was praying for 1 hour per day for 10 months, doing the whole course of the spiritual exercises. And there is this prayer that I only know in Spanish, so I hope that you can help me, which is like, que todas mis acciones, that all my intentions, actions, and thoughts, I put on your service, right? I don't. How do you? It's this preparatory prayer.
Yeah, that's pretty common, and I'm pretty sure it's definitely saturated in the second week. Yeah.
So the whole idea is that to prepare yourself, and I pray that every time that I don't have anything to say when I enter a church. Here right now, during the teacher, there is like an adoration chapel, and I just passed by earlier today, and I sat down and just said that. And I don't have anything to say, but I want my presence to be like that here, that all my thoughts, all the, like, my actions and everything that I will do here will serve you.
Yeah.
And nothing else.
Yeah. You know, I don't mean to I have an image that's funny, but I think it reinforces this point. So I was just imagining, like, what would Ignatius look like in the 21st century? I think he'd have like a badge that says, I'm here to help, because that really was at the heart of his spirituality, which is behind that, the preparatory prayer you just named. Like, I want to help you, God. I want to be at your disposal. You know, and there's all sorts of, like, the prayers all reflect that. Well, they reflect more than that, but there is a sense of, like, the calling is to be of service, and that prayer really conveys that. I think your stories really convey that, right? To be at God's disposal, to be available, and actually that's also a great word. You know, whatever context one is in, in what way am I available to the good, to God? Yeah. Other thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I have so many thoughts and stories, but I feel like I'm going to go off on more tangents if I keep this.
Go? I don't know. Yeah. I was thinking also, like, the same way that you were saying earlier, that part of your job is just to create spaces or where people can encounter, have that encounter with God. We at GRS, we started a program for doing court observation, and actually it was born out of kind of my desperation of not being useful right now in the situation that we are living, and some colleagues, some people that I know going to court and seeing that was very inspiring, and then I wanted to do something similar, and we started this program, and now I feel like it comes out of a deep call of trying to read what is happening right now and seeing how I can better serve that reality. Yeah. But when we developed the manual, we decided to put at the end the examen, very focused on do the examen after going to court. And takes a moment to debrief and to put into the hands of God what you just experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, there's no way that you can just put that on your back and continue your life.
Yeah. That resonates for me, even though I don't have the particular experience of court observation, but it reminded me, I used to work in a very high stress job. I was a patient advocate in a cancer care unit, head and neck surgical oncology. There was no doubt that it was a graced place in a lot of ways. It was also just really stressful, like toxic work environment, tons and tons of tough situations, tons and tons of people to care for. And the examen and the spiritual exercises helped me notice details that otherwise I would not have, so that I became more aware that amidst it all, God is in those details with me. And that's not just like monotonous or endless work, but that I can press on, in fact. Yeah. So it comes full circle in that regard. Yeah. And for our listeners too, especially in your professional environment, whether you are going formal religious, kind of career or not, like I think there's a similar dynamic, and the examen helps unlock that. So check it out. Pray it daily. You'll get sick of it, but it does a lot. It does an awful lot. Well, I think we're approaching the conclusion here, and coming back to this theme and to the legacy of the Ignatian family teaching for justice. For me, it's my second. For you, it's probably more than your second.
Yeah, I was at the teaching back when it was in Georgia. So
right.
I've been around for a while.
I really wanted to go. It was tough for a number of reasons. One is my birthday was on it, but then it's also like,
you were that kind of kid.
But it was also signing waivers and like, hey, mom and dad, something might happen. It's kind of like, I don't know about that, son. But I really wanted to. But either way, like, it's still really important to be here. It's all sorts of seeds are planted, even in me, right? That this is a growth opportunity. And on that theme, I think it's a really great thing to do as part of all these conversations, is to lift up a hero of spirituality and justice. And it doesn't need to be canonized saint, doesn't even need to be a Christian figure, could be living, could be dead, could be someone no one's heard of. But insofar as you're able to and are free to, like, who comes to mind for you as a paradigm of spirituality or faith and justice?
Oh man, I have a long list. I guess since we're here at the teaching, I'll give a shout out to our JVs. For those JVs who are lucky enough to serve in Tacna, Peru, one of the best places in the world, I think Father Fred Green is an example that stands out for me. He's still alive. He's quite old. I think he's 102, maybe even older than that. He's an old World War II pilot from the original California province who went to Peru as a missionary at that time. And then never left. They brought him back to the U.S. one time, and he was so depressed that he told his provincial that he had to go back. Mm-hmm. And then he switched provinces. He left the California province and officially joined, and he actually became Peruvian. Mm-hmm. And while he was in Tacna, he started, 2 different schools, a social center, attention to migrants near the border. Tacna is a border town, so there's a lot of migrants coming in and out. There always have been. And he started all of these really wonderful works, and he just gave his whole life to this border town that, if you look it up in Lonely Planet, it says if you're in Tacna, it's because you're either going to or coming from Chile. I disagree. I think it's a wonderful place to go. So Father Fred Green, I think, is the type of saint of the Jesuits who will never be saint, I would say, but he really gave his whole life to the Society of Jesus and to Tacna and to Peru and to the service of the faithful that he found in that long lost town all the way down on the border of Chile.
Love it.
You can't top Fred Green.
No. But I was thinking, no. I was thinking maybe Jesuits in Spain that joined the Society of Jesus in the early 90s after the martyrs and after what they saw with the Society of Jesus and those like amazing lives. And those vocations have made me be the person that I am right now. So they are like common people. And I cannot only talk about one, but they are the people that said yes, and a very important and intense moment in history for the Catholic Church, but also for like general public. And they said yes, they lived out their vocation, and they inspired us in, for example, my Jesuit high school, or that they were talking about el Padre Velaz, no, the founder of Fe Alegría, talking about bringing education where the asphalt ends. And for me, that changed my life when I was like 7 years old. Yeah. And seeing that and being in a Jesuit elementary school in Spain and seeing that they were others somewhere else in the world, that I was linked to them in some way, that made me be the person that I am right now. So those small people, but like just like us. And I was thinking also about my husband, like a true hero. But I remember when we met in Peru, in that small town that he was mentioning in Tacna, and I found that I had someone that I could live my life with this profound sense of social justice, of service, and feeling that we will be building a family out of not only love, for sure, but about the way that we were seeing the world. Our family, and we said that when we got married, it's not just about our kids. It's about all the people that we will encounter in our life that we want to live as a family with. So just there, being able to find that for my own life. Yeah.
I love that. And engaged and married couples, future listeners, take notice. It's good to have deeply shared values, right? Have a sense of mission, because that is in fact what married couples are called to do and to be. As you were speaking, it dawned on me. Oh, do you want to say something, Don?
I was just going to say, I tell people a lot. I've done a lot of things in my life I don't recommend. I have tattoos. I don't recommend it. I think it's good to have a rule against it and then find exceptions. Yeah. Long distance relationships, we survived. But again, I don't recommend it. I'll accept exceptions. If you're in the market for marriage, though, we really recommend it because it's really a great lifestyle. It's a very recommendable way. It's not for everybody, you know. I'm not judging. I just think we really enjoy being married and enjoy marriage as a vocation. So
there we go.
We're big proponents for those listeners out there.
Well, as you were both speaking too, I've never framed it this way. My wife and I celebrated. We called it our half and half because we've known each other for half of our lives. Wow. So instead of like a traditional 10, 15, 25-year anniversary, half and half.
That's awesome.
The other thing that's a half and half is the Jesuits. Like our marriage is directly tied with the Jesuits. It's amazing. So all of that is to say, like, I'm all for vocation too. I highly recommend marriage as a vocation. Hopefully you'll learn lots of really great things from our guests this evening. And there's just so much to say. Thank you both again for a great episode here. OIS, we are very excited to continue to partner with JRS and AJI and with all of our friends and in the Ignatian family, especially here at IFTJ. And as you listen, folks, invite you to savor some of the stuff from this particular episode here, and keep in mind the different ways that God's inviting you to notice in yourself and the world around us and your relationships. Special thanks to our guests: Clara Sayans, Outreach Manager, Jesuit Refugee Service, USA, and John Byrd, Communications Manager, American Jesuits International. You can learn more about the Jesuit Refugee Service, USA by visiting them online at jrsusa.org. More info about American Jesuits International can be found on their site at americanjesuitsinternational.org. And you can read more about the Ignatian Solidarity Network at ignatiansolidarity.net. As always, we invite you to continue learning more about Ignatian spirituality at ignatian.info. wishing you grace today on your Ignatian way. This podcast was hosted by me, Dr. Dave De La Fuente, and produced and presented by the Office of Ignatian Spirituality, a ministry of the USA East Province of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits.